Chapter 4178. Walk around, Jian Wushuang, tell us well, where did you go this millennium? Now even I can't see your depth. Qingfeng Shunhu took the sword Wushuang, so ready to go inside the palace. Over the past millennium, Qingfeng Shunhu was full of guilt over Jian Wushuang's one finger, thinking that it was himself who had dragged Jian Wushuang. Only then did Jian Wushuang fail to escape the hunting of Qing Shuzi. Although later, Bloodwave Supreme summoned them to inform Jian Wushuang that he had not died, and his guilt had not been reduced by half. Now, he finally saw Jian Wushuang's safe return, and seemed to be stronger than before. His guilt filled his throat, and he felt full of guilt. Don't you continue to pick the strong ones? Jian Wushuang asked, turning his head. Qingfeng didn't answer, and King Zhoujia shook his head, disdainfully humming, if you have the strength to take my hand, naturally you would have come out to take it, and those who are still in the present are still afraid to try. Yes, but it's all stinky fish and shrimp. Even if there are people who can take my hand, they are just courageous. What is the use of? This point is transparent. Jian Wushuang nodded in approval. Soon the three entered the palace. Lord Gunchuan and others who passed the test of King Nine Calamities followed closely, in awe. The gates of the palace closed slowly. Many of the ultimate masters present, seeing this scene, could not help but stare at each other. What's the situation? Looking at it like this, we may not be able to enter the King of the Calamity camp. The ultimate master who hasn't tried it yet, shakes his head with a bitter smile. However, they had already expected this result, and they chose it by themselves. Therefore, they were not more frustrated. Compared to this, they are more concerned about the identity of the fourth-level master who finally appeared and broke through the giant palm of Zhu Jiawang. You guys, I look at the situation just now. This fourth-level master who is terrifying in strength seems to know them. Aren't you nonsense? You just looked at the expressions of King Zhoujia and Qingfeng, and you were so enthusiastic about us with the strength of that fourth-level master, you should be famous in the universe. Why have you never heard of such characters in the universe before? Just as everyone was wondering and talking head-to-head, an ultimate master suddenly seemed to think of something and exclaimed, I know who that person was just now. Who is he? Everyone looked towards the ultimate master. The ultimate master, Wen Yang, took a deep breath, and said in a deep voice, presumably everyone is no stranger to the Battle of Fengyang Canyon 1,000 years ago. Everyone nodded. The battle in Fengyang Gorge for 1,000 years was naturally familiar with the battle of the top forces in order to raise a potion of breakthrough supremacy. Do you still remember that there was a fourth-level master in the team of the Nine Kings? The ultimate master continued. Well, I remembered, it seemed that there was this person. Yes, I remember this person was still fighting with Qingzuzi for a while, and there was no wind falling. I was there at the time, and was surprised for a while. The black-robe swordsman just now is the man who fought with Qing Shuzi 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, the sword was unparalleled, and it was dominated by the fourth grade, and it fought against Qing Shuzi directly. This battle was not dazzling. This incident was later spread. Think of it. At the same time, everyone in the audience immediately remembered that after the war in Tianfeng Canyon, Qing Shuzi went to kill this person at any cost. Then the man was in great trouble. 1,000 years ago, the Qingshu sun chased this person, and ended up with an unknown end. The people of the Taishu Temple, for thousands of years, have been searching for the Qingshu sun. Yeah, the Qingshu god sun was missing to hunt this talent back, but now this person has returned without incident. People who are to Shushen Temple will definitely come to him. Well, that Qingzuzi, but the contemporary godson of the Taishu Temple, can be said to be the most outstanding genius of the hundreds and even thousands of chaos periods. As a result, the person was disappeared in the ruins of Tai Luo after killing this person. That's all, but this person is back again. Do NT think about it, the person who is to Vain Temple will be furious and let out all his anger. Just wait and see. People in the Taixian Temple, as long as they know the news, will not come to this person soon. Many of the ultimate masters shook their heads to discuss and expressed their optimism about Jian Wushuang's future. Although Jian Wushuang's performance just now is very strong, you must know that the temple is too virtual, but it is a big immortal force in the whole universe. In the hall, Jian Wushuang, King Zhoucai and Qingfeng Shunhu sat cross-legged and crossed their knees in front of the three of them. There were 3 low-table coffee tables, and there were several pots of spirit wine on the coffee table. Jian Wushuang, can now tell, where have you been this millennium? Qingfeng Shunhu asked with a smile. The king of Zhoujia silently said nothing, but his eyes were casually turned to Jian Wushuang, and he could see that he had wondered where Jian Wushuang had gone this millennium, and why the atmosphere changed greatly after he returned. Jian Wushuang heard the words, raised the glass, took a sip, and said, "This is a long story. When Qing Xuanzi chased and killed me, I was forced to flee, and I could only run away all the time, but ended up at the edge of the Taro ruins. It's a special place, where I got rid of Qing Xuzi, and I got some special opportunities, and my strength has improved. As for my breath, it is because I cover it up by means of means." Jian Wushuang just made a simple explanation. He did not intend to tell anyone about the second floor of the Tail ruins. After all, this matter is important. The contents inside it are enough to make a supreme red eye. Speaking of this, Qingfeng Shunhu and King Zhoulong he can be regarded as living together, but the heart has always been unpredictable. No one knows. They know whether Jian Wushuang will have any worries after getting the second chance of the second layer of the Taro ruins. Even if they didn't do anything, but once this news leaked out, Jian Wushuang didn't need to think about it. At that time, people in the entire universe would chase and kill him, for fear that the Palace of Life could not protect him. After all, that's the heritage of Tai Luo Supreme. Just the various treasures and source rocks in the universe are enough to boil many powerful people in the universe, not to mention the amazing eternal magical powers such as Taro Sword Code, and the Taro Sword of the famous universe. Browse and read. A better reading experience comes from I-Read novels. Chapter 4179. After listening to Jian Wushuang's explanation, the King of 9 Calamities and the Qingfeng God who looked at each other, both of them smiled. They can see that Jian Wushuang's explanation is somewhat perfunctory, but they don't blame Sword Wushuang, who will have a secret after all. They are more curious about the experience of Jian Wushuang for more than 1,000 years, but since Jian Wushuang is not willing to say too much, they will naturally not ask more. Jian Wushuang, you can come back safely, and now you are there, we are confident in the last battle. Qingfeng said with a smile. Last battle. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, and a flash of doubt flashed in his eyes. King Zhoujia nodded and said lightly, "It's time for us to leave Taro ruins, but before we leave." There was a flash of words in the eyes of King Zhoujia. "Have to calculate the account first." Jian Wushuang heard the words in his heart, and there was a coldness in his eyes. "What are you going to do?" Jian Wushuang said. "How to do it?" Wang Senhan with a smile said. Naturally, he directly came to the door, crushed Yin Peng's body 1 inch by 1 inch, and burned his soul a bit. When Jian Wushuang nodded and asked, "Any time?" King Nine Robber replied. Jian Wushuang thought and thought back, then 3 days later. At this point, the time is set. Jian Wushuang, King Zhoucai, and Qingfeng Shunhu chatted for a while, then dispersed. Inside a closed dormitory, the sword sat cross-legged, Tai Luo Jian suspended in front of his knees. Jian Wushuang opened the first page. Slowly, the world in front of him turned into the darkness of silence again, and he continued to be enlightened by the sword trick of Yongyi. This sword, although he only realized a little fur, but the power of it has become the most lethal move in the hands of Jian Wushuang now. It can be said that Yongyi has become one of the killers of Jian Wushuang now at the bottom of the box. Once used, it must be shocking. 3 days passed by. On the 3rd day, early in the morning, the 3 kings of Zhoujia, Jian Wushuang, and Qingfeng Shunhu, as well as some of the ultimate masters who had previously committed to the king of Zhoujia, gathered in the hall. "This seat does not hide you. Now our first battle is to kill the Lord Yin Peng. If anyone is afraid and wants to leave, this seat is not blocked." King Zhoujia stood in the main hall of the hall, and Lost Hand said. As soon as the voice fell, the hall became noisy suddenly, and many of the ultimate masters changed slightly. Going to kill Yin Peng. That Yin Peng dominates many powerful men. There are dozens of ultimate dominators alone. Although the individual strength is not strong, but they are united and want to kill, I am afraid. It's too dangerous. Immediately, a few of the ultimate masters shrank their heads, and there was a resignation in their eyes. They followed Zhujiawang to come to the backing, but not to die. This seat to you, after this battle, kill everything Yin Peng dominated, this seat is all unnecessary, you all share it. King Zhoujia continued to speak lightly. After this sentence, those ultimate masters who had resigned in their eyes were startled. None of the 9 calamities over the years, Yin Peng has dominated one of the camps, and the magic drug he has collected in his hands is unknown. If he is killed, begging for wealth. Suddenly, many of the ultimate masters moved in their hearts, and their faces were emaciated. This seat gives you time to think about Ayaka. After Ayaka, tell me the answer. After a joss stick. The ultimate master at the scene took a deep breath and seemed to have made a decision, and said invariably, King of the 9th calamity, I will wait. I will follow you in a battle. After hearing the words, Zhujiawang had a smile on his indifferent face, and nodded back, good. At the same time, in the central area of the Tara ruins, another plain. Compared with other places in the Tailuo ruins, it is more lively here, and many of them eventually dominate the camp and form a lively scene. In the largest hall here, Yin Peng dominated and talked with a smile of enthusiasm. Beside him, there were 2 of them. The man on the left is wearing a purple gold crown, wearing a 9-clawed dragon suit, majestic, and has a light golden flame mark on the eyebrow. If the water which dominated here at this time, he would be able to recognize this person, who is now in the Tara ruins, ranking among the 2nd camp of the Great Blessed God Kingdom, His Royal Highness III. And the other person was wearing a red robe, with a tall figure, with his hair tied into a small braid and scattered on his back, sitting barefoot, and that was the King of Zhennan. Yin Peng, you suddenly called me over, what do you want to do? Wang Zhennan frowned, and said impatiently. His Royal Highness the 3 emperors who worshipped the kingdom of God was also dominated by Yin Peng, whose face was not so good. Not long ago, the 2 of them suddenly received a rumor dominated by Yin Peng, asking them to come here and talk about what was important. Sure enough, the people in the Blood Temple did not come. Yin Peng looked at the 3 seats he had prepared in advance, but now the one that was empty, shook his head and whispered to himself. Immediately, he looked sideways at King Zhennan and the 3 princes, and smiled slightly. 2 of you, you have recently heard about King Jozai recruiting powerful men. Okay, the King of Zhennan raised his eyebrows. The King of Jozai recruited the strong and did not deliberately conceal it. He naturally knew it. No, this is not a secret, Yin Peng. Just say what you want to say. You know, the king hates selling the most. The prince is a little calm and restless. There are strange things in it. Listen to me. Yin Peng dominated his expression calmly, coughed, and slowly said, I know the King of 9 calamities best, but he is always arrogant and ignorant of others. Therefore, he rarely goes with others, let alone mentions him. What recruits people? So once he recruits people, then he can be certain that something big is going to happen. Big event. Zhennan Wang Wenyang shrank his pupils. Next to the 3 princes of the great kingdom of God, there was a look of interest on his face. Yes. Yin Peng nodded his head, and then continued, the King of 9 calamities has been in the ultimate realm for dozens of chaos eras, causing his status in the Temple of Life to plummet. We do need to think about it, knowing that he must be very anxious to break through the supreme realm. And 1,000 years ago, in the Fengyang Canyon, the King of the 9 robbers broke through our strangulation and got the elixir that increased the chance of breaking the supreme. Now that the time is calculated, he should go back and break through the supreme realm. So he went back, that is why it's hard to do with us. You still want to take back the supreme potion in his hand? Wang Zhennan asked lightly. For desktop users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iRead Novel. Chapter 4180. Recapture the magic potion. Yin Peng dominated Wenyang, and pulled a slight ridicule of the corner of his mouth, shaking his head. Zhennan King, now it is not a question of us regaining the magic drug in his hand, but it is time to settle accounts with us. The King of Zhennan squinted his eyes. He was not a stupid person. When Yin Peng said that, he already understood the meaning of Yin Peng. Then what do we do now? Asked King Zhennan. Yin Peng dominated Wen Yang, and a flash of coldness flashed in his eyes, and his voice became cold. My idea is that we are united and we will fight directly against he. Otherwise, it is definitely not a 9-strength force. The king's opponents will only be knocked out by him one by one, and defeated one by one. There was a hint of thought in King Zhenan's eyes, then he nodded and said, yes. The reason why his lips are cold, Zhennan King still understands. In the face of the King of 9 Calamities, the King of Zhennan and Yin Peng are almost a grasshopper on a rope. You don't need to know that if King Juju really plans a war, they will never let them go. As long as one of them is defeated, it means that the other is not good. The King of 9 Calves has resentment with the two of you, but not with this seat. Yin Peng, what do you mean by calling this seat? At this time, the 3 princes of the kingdom of God who had never spoken, had no face. The expression said. Yin Peng dominated the story, without half distress, and smiled lightly. His Royal Highness 3, you are right, you really have no resentment against King Josai, but King Josai as the first master of the universe, how many treasures are in its ring no one knows. I think His Royal Highness 3, always interested in this. I can promise here that if the 3 of us join forces to kill the King of the 9 robbers and divide his treasure, the one that belongs to me will not be, all to His Highness. How do you see? The 3 princes heard the words and suddenly laughed as if they had heard some funny jokes. With a playful look, he looked at the sovereign of Yin Peng and said, Yin Peng, Your Highness is the 3 princes who worship the kingdom of God. Do you think that His Highness will lack those treasures on the King Josai King? After speaking, he got up and planned to leave. Yin Peng dominated Wen Yang and nodded, but he was not disappointed, as if the 3 princes had refused, it was already in his expectation. His Royal Highness 3, please wait. Yin Peng shouted. The 3 princes paused for a moment, then looked back. Oh, what else do you want to say? Lord Yin Peng smiled and said, His Royal Highness 3, I know you are not interested in those treasures of King Josai, but are you also not interested in the name of his first master in the universe? I heard recently, the Supreme Emperor who worships the Kingdom of God intends to select one of his 9 emperors to be the next master of the Kingdom of God, to reach the throne. If your Highness can kill the first master of the universe, you are in. I am afraid that the might of Darfan God will reach a whole new level. In addition, if your Highness can help you this time, as the King of the South of the Kingdom of the Great Sun God, you will be grateful to your Highness. The words fell, and Yin Peng dominated his head and looked at Zhennan King. The King of the South of the town then joked, His Royal Highness, if you can help this time, my king must represent the great kingdom of the sun and help you ascend to the throne. After speaking, both Yin Peng and Zhennan King looked at His Royal Highness the 3 princes with smiles. His Royal Highness, believe me, it is absolutely easy to reunite our 3 parties to suppress a 9 calamity king. Yin Peng dominated Zun Shan. The 3rd prince heard the words, and his eyes flickered suddenly. After a long time, the 3 princes looked at the smiling Yin Peng and Zhennan King with expressions in their mouths, and finally said, The King of 9 Calamities, I can go with you to kill, but the things in the Chenkuan ring after his death, I want half. If we really worship the kingdom of God, we really hope that King Zhennan will persuade the Supreme Emperor of your great kingdom of God to fully support me. How? The Great Japanese God Kingdom is not far from the Great Japanese God Kingdom, and they are all the top forces in the universe. If they can make good relations with the Great Japanese God Kingdom, it will indeed be a great help to the 3 princes. Yin Peng, the governor of Zhennan, immediately smiled at each other and nodded without hesitation. His Royal Highness 3 princes, I am honored that you can join us. The 3 princes said and said lightly, Tell me about your plan for King 9 Calamities. King Zhennan looked at Yin Peng with the same curiosity. He believed that Yin Peng had called them over, and he must have a calculation in his heart. Yin Peng dominated with a slight smile, and said, It's very simple. In the camp of King Zhou, in fact, the only one who can really get it is the King Zhou alone. As for other blue peaks, including the ultimate trust in him now, dominance is not to be feared at all, don't need to look at it so. At that time, the 3 of us will only need to contain and suppress the King of Zhejian, and the 300 of us will add up to nearly 100 of them. The is enough to crush His Majesty the King of Zhoulang. Once waiting for our Majesty's ultimate master, completely defeat the power of His Majesty, and then turn to kill the Zhoulong king in turn, even if it is the king of Zhoulong, there must be only a way to defeat. Even if you are lucky, you can really leave the universe's first master completely. When it comes to the end, Yin Peng dominates the venomous look on his face, his eyes flashing with coldness, and a sense of murder is boiling. King Zhennan and the three princes watched Yin Peng dominate, but somehow they couldn't help it. The ruins of Tyler, the central area, on the mountain where King Zhoulong is located. Set off. Go here just to settle Yin Peng. King Zhoujia stood in the first place, and after Shen Sheng finished speaking, he stepped into a streamer and took the lead in the sky. Immediately, an ultimate master followed closely behind, and similarly turned into dozens of streamers, quickly rushing to the place where Yin Peng dominated. At this moment, the sky was dazzling to the extreme. This was led by the King of Nine Calamities, and more than a dozen top-level ultimate dominated the accompanying streamers, exuding a strong and terrifying atmosphere. There was no meaning to hide the atmosphere at all, and it passed across the sky. Jian Wushuang wore a wide hood, a black robe, and a sword box on his back, mixed with the ultimate dominator, and also swept towards the place where Yin Peng dominated. Jian Wushuang, I'm afraid this battle will not be easy. If you can't afford it, you will evacuate first, understand? Qingfeng Shunhu held a Fangtianhua halberd in his hand and told his head. Okay. Jian Wushuang responded with a casual smile. For desktop users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iRead Novel. Chapter 4181. Rumble. King Zhoujia and others were so powerful that they quickly swept across the sky and dragged a long tail flame. Countless ultimate dominators in the ruins of Tai Luo saw this scene, and their faces changed slightly. Walk around, it is estimated that something big will happen in the ruins. Looking in this direction. Can the King of Nine Calamities be the trouble to go to Yin Peng? Heaven of the Torah ruins. I am afraid it will change. An hour later, King Zhoujia, Jian Wushuang and others came to the barren bloodplain where Yin Peng dominated. There are dozens of ultimate masters camping here, forming a lively scene. After the arrival of King Zhoulong, the dozens of ultimate masters under the control of Yin Peng suddenly raised their heads and looked nervously at King Zhoulong. King Zhoujia looked down at them, shook his head disdainfully, seemingly crowded, but it was a piece of sand. Immediately, he looked up and stared straight at the center of the plain, the most magnificent temple. The cold voice burst like a thunder. Yin Peng, come out and die, boom. Suddenly, the voice of King Zhoujia fell like a thundering thunder, shaking the whole barren bloodplain. However, there was peace in that temple, and no one responded. Seeing this, King Zhoujia couldn't help sneering, raised his palm directly, and took a hard picture of that temple. A huge palm as white as jade condenses in the void, and a scent of destruction overflows from the gap between the fingers, which will directly stimulate its void. This palm is much more horrible than when it was recruiting and evaluating the ultimate master. It seems that the sky and the earth are discolored. It can pick up the stars and the moon. This is the true strength of Zhujiawang. Suddenly, there were countless ultimate dominators present, and there was a shock on his face. It's okay to follow the kings of Zhujia, after all, they have already seen the power of Zhujia, and this time the king of Zhujia's real shot, the horror power they created is also expected. And Yin Peng dominated His Majesty's ultimate master. Where he had seen such powers, his expression suddenly turned, and a shock came from his eyes. Just in this palm, about to be photographed on that temple, a dark voice sounded. King of Calamity, it is you who died. First, a Jinji spun out from the temple while spinning, fiercely slicing on the giant palm, offsetting the power of the giant palm, and then, I saw Yin Peng dominating the palace. Out, holding the Jinji. I thought you didn't dare to come out. King Zhoujia stood with a smirk, smirking slightly. Since that's the case, then let me die. After all, he didn't talk nonsense, he just stepped on it, and swiftly and violently went to kill Yin Peng. The King of Nine Calamities is indeed the King of Nine Calamities, and his actions are still so overbearing. Yin Peng's face did not die in the slightest panic. He shook his head with a smile and swept back quickly. Escape Yin Peng, 3 million years ago, You fortunately escaped from this seat. Do you think you can escape this time? King Jiujia was expressionless, stepped hard, and his body suddenly shot like a cannonball, looting towards the master of Yinpeng. The two cascaded, and soon disappeared into the sight of everyone. It seems that we will avoid a deadly battle. The gun master Chuan and others could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Just then, variations protrude, kill. The cubs of His Majesty the King of Calamity, all die. Ha 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 ha, the absence of the King of 9 Calamities is tantamount to killing them without a head. A sneer and roar suddenly sounded from all sides. Qingfeng's complexion changed suddenly, and I saw nearly 100 ultimate masters, coming from all directions quickly, and the original masters under the solemn expressions of Yinpeng's solemn expressions in the plains all showed a cruel smile. Why, how come so many people? Where did these people come from? Not good. These ultimate masters are all those who worship the kingdom of God, and the king of Zhennan. Look. That's the high armor of His Majesty Zhennan. And there is that person, the first warlord of the 3 emperors of the kingdom of God, and Jiao Yang dominates. It's a trap. Suddenly, the faces of Gunagawa and other people suddenly changed their expressions, and startled. Qingfeng Shunhu is a heart sinking continuously. He understands that this is a trick. He looked up at the direction in which Zhu Jiawang chased after the disappearance of Lord Yinpeng, and took a deep breath. Now the people who worship the kingdom of God and Zhennan King appeared here, but the 3 princes and Zhennan King did not appear. I'm afraid. I saw that in the far distance, the 4 great waves of divine power suddenly exploded. One of the divine power fluctuations is the King of 9 Calamities. Sure enough, Zhennan King and the 3 princes and Yinpeng dominated. Qingfeng Shunhu face a bitterness. Gunchuan dominates and others are even more desperate. At this moment, morale was at an extreme low. Slap. Just then, his shoulder was suddenly patted. Well, he turned his head and looked puzzledly. I saw Jian Wushuang watching him calmly and smiling. What are you doing here, stretching your neck and waiting to be killed? Qingfeng smiled wryly. Jian Wushuang, didn't you see the current situation? But there are nearly 100 ultimate masters. Although they are not strong, they are also the ultimate masters. If the 9 kings are still there, we would barely it can be a battle, but now they are entangled in Zhujie, it's up to us. How can we fight? Jian Wushuang heard the words and sighed, shaking his head and asking, do you not know how to fight? Yes. Qingfeng nodded wryly. Then you are optimistic. Jian Wushuang turned his head suddenly, looking at an ultimate master who rushed to the camp of Dafeng Kingdom of God. Wu Weeping Sword appeared in his hands. Next moment, sword Wushuang Yijian cut off. Suddenly, a half-moon Zhenmang split, and the sky was ripped apart by 300 feet. How to fight? And the ultimate master who rushed in first was directly cut off by this, and even the expression was too late to change, it was directly turned into a fan powder, and the gods were destroyed. Jian Wushuang looked back at the shocking face of Qingfeng Shunhu, Gunchuan Dominion and others, and said lightly, now, do you understand? At this moment, the audience fell into silence. Qingfeng Shunhu, Gunchuan dominated, and so on, their eyes widened, and they looked at Xiong Zhenshuang unbelievably. And there are nearly 100 ultimate dominators with cruel smiles on their faces, and their faces suddenly change rapidly, as if they had stepped on the brakes, and their steps were stagnant. For desktop users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iRead Novel. Chapter 4182. The first is more. One sword to kill the ultimate master. Who is this? How could it be so scary? The most important thing is that this man's divine power fluctuations are still only the 4th level master. The ultimate masters united by the 3 forces of Zhennan King, the 3 princes, and Yinpeng, all looked at Jian Wushuang, with unprecedented shock on their faces. The 4th level dominator, in the eyes of many ultimate dominators present, is almost an ants-like existence, but such a person, using only 1 sword, beheaded to kill an ultimate dominator. Jian Wushuang's expression was very calm from beginning to end. He glanced at Qingfeng Shunhu, and the master of Gunchuan, etc., without speaking. The next moment, he turned to face the nearly 100 ultimate masters who filled the sky, holding the Wu weeping sword obliquely and calmly speaking, "Who comes, who dies? Who comes, who dies?" This sentence was ridiculous from Jian Wushuang's mouth. A rude fourth-level master, who even told nearly 100 ultimate masters who came and died. However, the audience fell into a weird silence. Nearly 100 of the ultimate masters, none of them had unbelief on their faces, and they hesitated in the face of Jian Wushuang. Just now, they saw with their own eyes that it was such a fourth-level master who just slashed an ultimate master with just one sword. How terrible is this? No one wants to take his own life and try his sword. Behind Jian was Body, Qingfeng Shunhu, Gunchuan Master and others looked at each other, and there was a strong shock in their eyes. With nearly 100 ultimate dominators, what a terrible and powerful force this is. But they were ashamed by Jian Wushuang. For a while. This son is only the fourth-level master. Where can he be strong again? He must have used a costly mystery to create the horrible sword just now. Suddenly, one of the crowd held the spear and was the ultimate master in gold armor, Lungheng said. This person is the only Jiawei left under the king of Zhennan, and he is also the strongest one in the ultimate domination. Kill me. Immediately, the Jiawei gave a loud sigh and took the lead to kill Zhenshou. Master Shenjiawei is right, this son is only the fourth-level master. Even if he is strong, where can he go? Can it be against the sky? We have so many ultimate dominators. We were actually scared by a fourth-rank dominator. Isn't it a joke? In the crowd, two final masters snorted loudly. Immediately, a flash of decisiveness flashed in the eyes of the nearly 100 ultimate masters, swarming towards Jian Wushuang's nest. They didn't believe it anymore, a fourth-ranked leader dominated, and they could block so many people with one enemy. All the amazing magical skills, carrying thousands of horrific powers, whistling and pressing against the sword unparalleled. For a while, the sky shook, even the top powerhouse in the ultimate domination, to face this powerful offensive, have to temporarily avoid the edge. Good job. A low voice came from under the sword's wide black hood. The next moment, Jian Wushuang raised his head suddenly, his eyes trembling with war. Kill. Swordless steps, the figure holding the sword instantly turned into a residual image, looting towards the nearly 100 ultimate masters. After he emerged from the second floor of the tail ruins, he had not used all his powers, whether it was to kill the two masters of the star and Tiansu, or the giant palm with one sword to defeat the king of 9 robbers. Even he himself did not know clearly, where is the limit of his combat power today. Just now, he used this battle to verify his strength. Which step did he reach? Open the sky. Jian Wushuang cut a sword obliquely, and in a moment, the Wu weeping sword in his hand was released with blood, and a fierce sword-like light like the sun was cut from the Wu weeping sword. Dozens of offensives. The Wu weeping sword trembled thousands of times instantly, and the sounds of the gods wept, and the voice of the Buddha and the moan groaned from the sword strangely. Today's Wu weapon sword has already changed its appearance a lot. It can be said that except for the sword embryo, the others are completely different. At that time, that Taro sword spirit controlled Jian Wushuang's body. In order to improve his strength, it was hard work and every effort to integrate the top materials in the second layer of the Taro ruins into the Wu weeping sword. And Wu Cry Excalibur, impressively from the top-class rule to the position of the treasure, elevated to the ultimate power of the rule of the treasure. It may seem that there is not much improvement, but in fact, the power between the two is quite different. Rumble. This sword broke out, and suddenly it was like a galaxy across the sky, directly crushing those dozens of offensives and crushing them. What? This is impossible. Countless ultimate dominator exclaimed. The sword unparalleled, like a wolf into the flock, began to kill. Call out. Jian Wushuang's own divine power is no longer reserved at all. It is 13,500 times the power of the divine power. It exploded at full strength, entraining his extremely high understanding of the laws of the universe, making his sword not only exquisite, profound, and powerful, it's shocking, and it's all over the corner full of avenue breath. Long before entering the second floor of the Tara ruins, Jian Wushuang's strength was enough to be tied to the top powers in the Ultimate Master. Even if compared to the nearly invincible Ultimate Master such as Qingshu Shenzi, he was only bad. On the ground. Today, Jian Wushuang's strength has been greatly improved once again, and his combat power is definitely even better than that of Qing Shuzi before. And he is different from Qing Shuzi. Qing Shuzi is just ordinary life, with limited divine power. Facing the siege of nearly 100 ultimate dominators, Qing Shuzi only has to retreat. Ku Jianzhuang's magical power is endless, and he is not afraid of being consumed. Therefore, although there are nearly 100 ultimate masters in his eyes, among them there are some top ultimate masters, but Ku Jianzhuang has no fear at all. Even with 100 enemies, these ultimate dominators can't pose much threat to him at all, only those killed by him one by one. I saw the Wu weapon sword in the sword without hands exuding a monstrous sword. Every sword that was cut can take a hard hit from the ultimate master. Only those top ultimate masters can barely take over. But even if it can continue, the top ultimate of the body will be more than furious. I said, "Who came up and died? I remember, you were the first one to rush up." Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold and his eyes were dull looking at the god armor hidden among many ultimate masters. Shen Jiawei saw the picture of Jian Wushuang ramming in the crowd and wantonly slaying. He was already scared and terrified. At this moment, when he heard Jian Wushuang's question, he had to say "I am, how? Then you die." The sword flashed in the eyes of the swordless man, and the mystery of dragon extinction broke out instantly. The power of the magic surged again, and the speed soared tenfold in an instant. He sideways escaped the sword mang that was eventually dominated by him, facing the armor. Killed away. Chapter 4183. Second more. The surrounding void. Dozens of ultimate masters, such as Qingfeng Shenhu and Gunchuan, all stared at the scene in front of them. They were already stunned. What did I see? A fourth-level master dominates a group of ultimate masters? This is too fierce, right? Oh my god, what is this horrible combat power? I have never heard of anyone who can dominate with the fourth rank in the entire universe, pressing a group of ultimate masters, going against the sky. This combat power is simply going against the sky. Qingfeng Shenhu and others wiped their eyes, their throats rolled, their faces were incredible. Originally, seeing nearly 100 ultimate masters suddenly coming, they were desperate in their hearts and almost all planned to give up. However, Jian Wushuang's shot instantly made them feel shock. The sword is unparalleled, just like the peerless sword came to the world, with an invincible posture, destroying the withering and breaking of the nearly 100 ultimate master. God, would we go up to help the sword unparalleled? An ultimate master swallowed and whispered. Do you think he needs it? Qingfeng Shenhu shook his head with a smile and said, we just need to look around and don't let those ultimate masters run away. After that, he looked up again at Jian Wushuang who smashed among the nearly 100 ultimate masters, and there was a touch of complexity in his eyes. At the beginning, when they first came to the ruins of Tai Luo, the Qingfeng princes still held their senior status and pointed out for Jian Wushuang. He knew that Jian Wushuang was strong, but his understanding of Jian Wushuang's strength was strong in talent and potential, not current strength. Even afterwards, Jian Wushuang and Qing Shuzi had a short fight with each other. Although Qingfeng Shenhu was shocked in his heart, he did not think that Jian Wushuang had surpassed himself. But now, he has to admit that he is by no means an opponent of sword unparalleled. He even thinks that the current sword is unparalleled. I am afraid that in terms of strength, it is the ultimate invincible existence. I am afraid that under the world, as long as the Supreme is not out, only the King of Nine Robbers can suppress the sword unparalleled. This is the demon who is amazingly beautiful. Qingfeng Shenhu sighed from his heart. I have to say that he looked at Jian Wushuang, and he felt envious. However, he practiced for a long time, and the veteran master who is longer than Zhu Jiawang is the ultimate master. But when it comes to Shuwei, let alone the King of Nine Calamities, even the nearly invincible beings in the Ultimate Dominator, he is not an opponent. In the future, sword warriors will become a top-level giant in the universe. Qingfeng God who muttered to himself, with a very firm tone. On the other side, the fighting continues. Happy. Jian Wushuang fought around in the crowd, dragon mystery broke out, and Wu weapon sword was urged to the extreme by his sword. No one could stop it under the sword. Jian Wushuang hasn't had such a happy fight for a long time. I just felt a breeze and couldn't help laughing. Seeing the ultimate dominator left around, he couldn't help trembling. Evildor. This person is simply a demon. Whether it is the majestic power of this sun or the understanding of the laws of the universe, they have reached far beyond their reach. A bang came, and the spear in the hand of the goddess guard was cut off without any hindrance by the Wu weapon Excalibur in the sword without hand. God Jiawei was once again split off by 200 feet with Jian Wushuang's sword, his face terrified. At this moment, his body armor was on the verge of fragmentation, and the vast divine power in his body was nearing the bottom. He knew that he had reached the brink of collapse, and could no longer receive the sword of Wushuang. This fourth level dominates. How could it be so strong? The warfare on the face of God Jiawei has long been replaced by panic, and the strength of Jian Wushuang is far beyond his expectations. He couldn't help but think, even if his master, Zhennan King, came to face his eyes. This fourth level dominate may not be the opponent, right? I can't escape the person I want to kill. Jian Wu's eyes looked at Shen Jiawei, and his footsteps again, and he stormed away towards Shen Jiawei. Damn! Seeing the situation, the goddess guard changed his expression, and quickly hurled towards a burly man with a naked upper body and an iron armor skirt on the outermost side. Faction, if I die, where can you go? This burly man is His Majesty's first warlord, Jiao Yang dominates. Jiao Yang dominated when Yang, his face was cloudy for a while. God Jiawei was right. Since the three princes promised to join hands with Yin Peng and Zhennan King, they are already grasshoppers tied to a rope. If God Jiawei is dead, their side will also. It won't be easy coming. Taking a deep breath, Kok Yang's eyes dominated by a decision, his right hand turned, and a huge black knife suddenly appeared in his hand. The next moment, a horrible flame, taken from the black giant knife, sounded the hunting of the void. Immediately afterwards, Jiao Yang dominated the whole body and broke out of power one step, screamed, and jumped towards the sword unparalleled. Go die! And the armor also performed the powerful secret technique of burning the blood of the divine power, changed the trend of mourning, holding the broken spear in his hand, and stabbed towards the sword Wushuang fiercely. Jian Wu's eyes looked at Jiao Yang, and raised his eyebrows. He could feel the extraordinary strength of this horn inflammation. That's interesting. Jian Wushuang smiled a little, and 13,500 times the strength of the divine power broke out. He looked at him and ran directly towards the master of Kok Yang. The sword of Wu weapon with no hands in the sword instantly struck with the flame sword dominated by Jiao Yang. First there was a blast, and the aftermath of the fight between the two directly stirred up the white waves of terror, driving the surrounding masters to retreat hundreds of feet. Immediately, the sword Wushuang felt that a hot force was coming from the hilt of the sword along the flame. There was a look of astonishment on Jian Wushuang's face, and the strength of this Jiaoyan's dominance was a lot higher than that of the armor, only to be the strongest among the nearly 100 ultimate masters. Although it has not yet reached the level of invincibility in the domination, it is at least very close to invincibility. Immediately, the power of his hand swayed, and the hot distance was immediately flattened. Jian Wushuang was surprised in his heart, but he didn't know which step of Jiao Yang, who was 3 steps back, was shock. What a terrifying power! Jiao Yang dominated his head, looking down at the right hand holding the knife, trembling with numbness, and his heart was shocked. You know, he is the ultimate dominator of the eloquence. He has enough strength to catch hundreds of mountains and pinch the stars, but now, he is 3 steps backwards by Jian Wushuang and Jian Jian. Chapter 4184. The first is more. Come again. Jiao Yang dominated his head, screamed, and slew towards Jian Wushuang again. Big flame overlord. Fire snakes rushed out of the huge sword in his hand, and slashed at the sword unparalleled along the sword. On the other hand, at the price of forbidden surgery, the goddess guard who returned to the top of his strength even stabbed with a broken spear. This stab is enough to stab the mountains. Ha 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 ha, good job. When Jian Shuangshang saw this, he was not afraid of anti-smiling. In his eyes, the warfare raged to the extreme, and he also shot towards the three. The three turned into 3 shockwaves, and slammed together. In the blink of an eye, the 3 directly fought against each other with 100 strokes, and the clamor of the void was rattling, and the aftermath of the frustration smashed this wild blood plain into hundreds of huge pits. Under the cooperation of Jiao Yang's Dominator and God's Armor Guard, the combat power soared, and rounds of attacks continued to surge towards the sword unparalleled like the tide of the sea. Jian Wushuang's expression was cold and he did not use any magical powers, but the Wu Weeping sword in his hand turned into a squall, not only crushing the attacks of Jiao Yang Dominant and Shen Jiawei as much as possible, but also had the strength to Jiao Yang Dominates and the Goddess Guard bombards indiscriminately. The place where the 3 played against each other directly formed a separation zone of nearly 100 feet, and the energy that destroyed the world was constantly interwoven and collided, and the rest of the ultimate masters could not even get close. Kill. On the other side, Qingfeng looked at the dozens of the ultimate masters who were about to flee, with a flash of cold in his eyes, lifting the Fangtian Huaji in his hand and killing him. Immediately, Qingfeng Shunhu turned into a streamer, stabbed in like a sharp knife. More than 10 powerful masters, such as Gunchuan Dominator, followed closely and killed more than 30 ultimate masters. The more than 30 ultimate masters had long been smashed by Jian Wushuang. At this moment, there was no intention to fight again. They were immediately caught up by Qingfeng Shunhu and others, all the way to kill. But just then, the farthest direction in which Zhu Jiawang disappeared, there was a sudden deafening laughter. Ha ha! Blood, I thought you wouldn't come, but fortunately, at the right time of your appearance, the 9 kings of the calamity had already fled their wings, and I and a few others joined forces, which is enough to bring the King of 9 suppression. The sound was soaring, with mad laughter. The sound came from that Yin Peng. Jian Wushuang, who was fighting fiercely, heard the laughter, and his eyes flashed. People in the Blood Temple have arrived. The 9 kings. Jian Wushuang frowned. Jian Wushuang will not question the strength of Zhu Jiawang, but he can compete with the Supreme. However, the few people who are currently fighting the King of Zhoulong, the 3 princes and the King of Zhennan are invincible among the ultimate masters. Even one-on-one is only slightly worse than the King of Zhoulong, and Yin Peng is barely dominated. The invincible in the ultimate domination, these 3 people joined forces, it is already difficult. But now the people in Blood Temple also come in. The Blood Princes of the Blood Heaven Palace join forces, and they can be invincible in the ultimate domination, but now there are 9 Blood Ambassadors in the ruins of Tai Luo. These 9 Blood Ambassadors are now all afraid to rush arrived. The 9 Blood Gods joined forces together, and the combat power will be even more terrible. Jian Wushuang can clearly feel that, where the Zhu Jiawang is located, after the intrusive divine power breathes in, the divine power fluctuations belonging to the Zhu Jiawang suddenly weakened. Apparently, with the arrival of the 9 Blood Emperors, the King of 9 Calamities has begun to be suppressed. Can't waste time here. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and turned to look at the 2 masters of Jiao Yang and Shen Jiawei, a flash of coldness in his eyes. Ha ha! Lord, they are going to defeat the King of Zhoujia, and when they make their way, I see you die. Ecstatic and laughed. I don't know if I will die, but you too will not survive. Jian Wushuang shook his head, a sword will fly into the armor of the armor with a severed spear, and his eyes suddenly became cold. Talented, supernatural. Talented, amazing life. Suddenly, the 2 great talents manifested together. First, a mysterious cosmic law came down, and the heavens and the earth suddenly darkened. Dark, not seeing any light. In this endless dark space, the strength of the Jiawei and Jiao Yang are affected to some extent. Immediately afterwards, the life deterrent effect was triggered, and a repressive force from the highest life fell instantly, which was from the high-level creatures, and the coercion from the bottom of the soul to the low-level creature. Time seems to freeze at this moment, and the body dominated by the Jiawei and Kok Yang freezes under the effect of life shock. The 2 of them look at Jian Wushuang, and they have an urge to worship. What is this means? They are like buffaloes in the mud. They twist their heads and look at each other, they can see the astonishment on each other's faces. The sword unparalleled, has instantly killed with a sword. Dead. Jian Wushuang's expression was cold, and the icy sword light directly inserted into the position of Dominion's chest. Then, on the Wu weapon sword, a sharp and horrifying sword intention broke out. This sword intention also carried an unprecedented strangulation power. Warla. The main body of Kokyang is also wearing the Arcana Warframe, but the level of the Arcana Warframe is not too high. Although it is the best of the top quality rules, it does not reach the level of the top quality rules. The sword unparalleled Wu weapon sword, however, has already exceeded the scope of the top grade rule treasure, reaching the extreme of the rule treasure. At the level of single theory, it is much higher than the angle treasure dominated by Jiao Yang. Therefore, at the moment when the sword's might power broke out in Wu weapon's sword, the arcane warframe that dominates the body of the horn inflammation was torn apart instantly, and the terrible sword will power continued to impact the lord of the angle inflammation. God body. Just a moment, the body dominated by Kokyang was smashed, and even with his divine power, he was crushed and cleaned at this moment. With an explosion, His Majesty, the three princes of the kingdom of God, slain the horns in the first battle and died. Ordinary life has limited divine power. Once the treasure battle gear is forcibly torn apart, the power of my sword is enough to kill it instantly. Even if he is a top ultimate master, there is only a dead end. Sword's eyes were cold, looking at the many treasures left after the death of Jiao Yang, and the corner of his mouth could not help showing a cold smile. Chapter 4184, 4184 1 against 100, Part 2. 4184 1 against 100, Part 2, in the surrounding void. Divine Marquis Qingfeng, ruler Spear River, and the other Omega rulers all stared at the scene in front of them in shock. What did I just see? A single fourth-stage chief ruler is suppressing a group of ultimate chief rulers? Isn't this a little too fierce? My God, what kind of terrifying battle strength is this? I've never heard of anyone in the entire universe who can suppress a group of ultimate rulers as a fourth-stage great ruler. Heaven-defying. His combat strength is simply heaven-defying. Divine Marquis Qingfeng and the others rubbed their eyes and gulped in disbelief. Originally, when they saw the sudden appearance of nearly 100 ultimate rulers, they had been in despair and had almost given up. However, Jian Wushuang's attack instantly caused a storm in their heart. Jian Wushuang was like a peerless sword god who had descended to the world. With an invincible posture, he had destroyed nearly 100 ultimate rulers. Divine Marquis, should we go up and help Jian Wushuang? An ultimate ruler swallowed and whispered. Do you think he needs to? Divine Marquis Qingfeng shook his head with a bitter smile. All we need to do is keep an eye on our surroundings and make sure the Omega rulers don't escape. After saying that, he raised his head again and looked at Jian Wushuang, who was fighting against the 100 ultimate rulers. A complicated look flashed in his eyes. When they first arrived at the Taro ruins, Divine Marquis Qingfeng had acted as a senior and guided Jian Wushuang. He knew that Jian Wushuang was strong, but he thought that Jian Wushuang's strength came from his talent and potential, not his current strength. Even after Jian Wushuang and Qing Shuzi were evenly matched, Divine Marquis Qingfeng did not think that Jian Wushuang's strength had surpassed his. Boxer Novel. But now, he had no choice but to admit that he was definitely not Jian Wushuang's match. He even thought that Jian Wushuang was already an invincible existence among the ultimate rulers in terms of power. In the whole world, as long as the supreme martial artist did not appear, only the 9th Kalpa King could suppress Jian Wushuang. This is a shockingly talented demon. Divine Marquis Qingfeng sighed. He looked at Jian Wushuang with envy. He was a veteran ultimate ruler who had cultivated for longer than the 9th Kalpa King. However, in terms of cultivation base, he was not even a match for the almost invincible existences among the ultimate rulers, let alone the 9th Kalpa King. Jian Wushuang will definitely become a top-notch giant arm in the universe in the future. Divine Marquis Qingfeng mumbled to himself, his tone confident. On the other side, the battle was still ongoing. Satisfying. Jian Wushuang fought in the crowd. He activated the dragon-destroying secret skill and activated the Wuqi divine sword to the extreme. No one could block his sword. It had been a long time since Jian Wushuang had such an enjoyable battle. He felt so carefree that he could not help but laugh out loud. The surrounding ultimate rulers, seeing this, could not help but feel terrified. A monster. This person was simply a monster. Whether it was his boundless and vigorous divine power or his comprehension of the principles of the universe, they had all reached a level that they could not reach. Bang! With a loud explosion, the spear in the divine armor guard's hand was cut in half by Jian Wushuang's Wuqi divine sword. The divine armor guards were forced back 2,000 feet by Jian Wushuang's sword again. They were extremely frightened. At that moment, his high-grade divine armor was on the verge of breaking and the vast divine power in his body was almost depleted. He knew that he was on the verge of collapse and he could not take another sword from Jian Wushuang. How can a stage 4 great ruler be so strong? The divine armor guard's fighting spirit was replaced by fear. Jian Wushuang's power had far exceeded his expectations. He could not help but think that even if his master, Lord Zhunnan, came, he might not be able to defeat this 4th stage ruler. The person I want to kill can't escape. Jian Wushuang looked at the divine armor guards. He took another step and rushed toward them. Damn it! Seeing this, the divine armor guards' expressions changed drastically. They immediately turned to a burly man in an iron skirt and shouted, "Horned Flame, don't forget, we're on the same side now. If I die, how good will you be?" This muscular man was none other than the number 1 general under the 3rd prince, Ruler Horned Flame. Ruler Horned Flame's expression wavered upon hearing this. The divine armor guards were right. The moment the 3rd prince agreed to work with the ruler Silver Rock and the Lord Zhunnan, they were already in the same boat. If the divine armor guards died, their camp would not have an easy time. They are here. Ruler Horned Flame took a deep breath, and a determined look appeared in his eyes. He flipped his right hand over, and a massive black saber instantly appeared in it. Kai! The next moment, a terrifying flame shot out from the black blade, burning the air. Then, divine power burst forth from the ruler Horned Flame's body. He took a step forward, roared, and jumped toward Jian Wushuang. Go to hell! The divine armor guards also performed a powerful secret skill that burned their divine power and blood essence. They changed their dejected state and stabbed at Jian Wushuang with their broken spears. What? Jian Wushuang looked at ruler Horned Flame and raised his eyebrows. He could sense that this ruler Horned Flame was far from ordinary. Now this is interesting. Jian Wushuang smiled. He unleashed his 13,500 times divine power and charged toward ruler Horned Flame. Bang! Jian Wushuang's Wuqi divine sword collided with ruler Horned Flame's flaming divine saber. A loud explosion rang out, and the shockwaves from their clash created a terrifying white wave of air that forced the surrounding ultimate rulers back several hundred yards. Then, Jian Wushuang felt a burning force coming from the hilt of the flaming divine saber. What? Jian Wushuang was surprised. This ruler was much stronger than the divine armor guards. He was probably the strongest expert among the 100 ultimate rulers. Although he was not invincible among rulers, he was at least very close to that level. Then, he waved his hand and the heat was immediately suppressed. Jian Wushuang was surprised, but he did not know how shocked ruler Horned Flame, who had retreated 3 steps, was. What a terrifying power! Ruler Horned Flame lowered his head to look at the saber in his right hand, which was trembling from the numbness, and his heart filled with shock. One should know that he was an ultimate ruler who had proven his Tao with his strength. His strength was enough to grab 100 mountains and crush the Earth Star. However, he was forced to take 3 steps back by Jian Wushuang's sword. Chapter 4185. Second more. Jian Wushuang is very clear. The reason why he can directly kill the master of Jiao Yang is not only because he has the power far beyond the master of Jiao Yang after casting the original universe. The most important thing is that his Wu Weeping Sword was instantly defeated. With the defense of Jiao Yang's body surface, his arcane warframe did not play any role. There is no arcane warframe defense, and there is a divine power in the air, and the sword Wushuang can be forcibly killed. Escape. At this time, the effect of life deterrence disappeared, and the armor guard suddenly grasped the life-saving straw, and looked horribly toward the back. In a short time, the goddess guard swept out nearly 1,000 feet, and was slightly relieved. Just when he turned his head and was ready to see if sword Wushuang caught up, before he turned his head completely, the light in the corner of his eye suddenly found that a sword like the moon was carrying thousands of thunderous might. Fiercely he hack. This path is like the swordman of Jiaoyue, which constantly enlarges in his pupils, then grows bigger, and finally do not. The armor guard screamed hysterically, and his figure was directly run over by the swordman. In terms of strength, he was not as good as horn inflammation, and his body protection ability was weaker than that of horn inflammation. Almost instantly, God Armor Wei was also beheaded on the spot, and the swordman, after beheading and killing the Jiawei, again split nearly 500 feet forward, before the power gradually weakened and finally disappeared. In the distance, Jian Wushuang retracted his gaze indifferently, and as he stepped, his figure turned into a black streamer, and he hurried toward the battlefield of King Zhoujia. In the ruins of Tailuo, on top of Zhouzhong Cloud. King of the 9th calamity, get hold of me. King of the 9 calamities, if you give up your resistance and take a vow of obsession and be a slave of the king, I will not be able to spare you. King of 9 calamities, 3 million years ago, when you destroyed my entire family, did you ever think of today? King of the 9 robbers, surrender the supreme divine pill. Our blood temple promises you that we will never interfere in the matter between you. Indifferent laughter continued to flow, and King Zhoujia stepped into the void, his expression gloomy to the extreme. King Zhennan, dominated by Yin Peng, 3 princes of the great kingdom of God, and 9 blood envoys in the blood temple. Among the 12 ultimate masters, there is a super-existence, forming a trend of encircling and strangling, trapping him. Not only that, Yin Peng was obviously prepared to dominate them, and a strong law circle was also arranged around it. This law circle also exerted a great suppression on the strength of Zhu Jiawang. Even though King Zhukei's combat strength is against the sky, among the 12 superpowerfuls who are surrounded by the pharaohs, they have only the power of parry and no fight back. If he keeps dragging on like this, the King of 9 Kings understands that even if he is perfect in life and has great divine power, he may also be consumed here. You want this seat to die, you can, but this seat has to see, who is the first to give this seat back? The King of Zhouzai Wang's eyes slowly moved across the faces of Zhennan Wang and others, his face hooked. There was a sneer of Mori Han. In the face of the threat from the crowd, instead of having any fear in his heart, he felt that the cavity in his body was silent and cold for dozens of chaos period blood, and began to boil. I don't know how many years, since King Zhoulong stepped into the ultimate realm, no one has caused him more than half a sense of threat, not to mention the immediate crisis of life and death. Negative stubborn resistance. A senseless struggle. The 12 of the surrounding masters sneered, but no one rushed. They know that with the invincible combat power of King Zhoulong, at this last moment, if they are desperately fighting, at least half of the 12 of them present will fall into the hands of King Zhoulong and bury him. No one wants to be backed by this. Oh. Why, all of them just said they would put me to death, but now I dare not. The King of Zhoujia saw this, and immediately burst out laughing, and he laughed extremely arrogantly and arrogantly. As soon as the words came down, King Zhennan and others could not help but look a bit ugly. Think of these 12 of them as being in the outside world. Which one does not belong to Tianjiao? Who saw them, not trembling, respectfully? Also, since you don't do it, then this seat will do it. After Zhu Jiawang smiled, he looked cold and looked at Yin Peng. For Yin Peng, the King of 9 Kings hated him. Dead. The next moment, the cold mang flashed in the eyes of the King of 9 calamities, and headed towards Yin Peng to kill. The master of Yin Peng seems to have long noticed, took out a handle of Jin Ji, and shot fiercely at the looting King Zhoujia. At the same time, Yin Peng dominated his steps slightly back, and the King of the South and the 3 princes rushed out from both sides, blocking the King of Zhoujia. 2 huge wheels emerged from the back of King Zhennan. The wheels were engraved with 9-footed Jinwu. When they were like the fierce sun, they smashed towards the King of Zhoulong. And the three princes wearing a 9-clawed python suit wearing a purple gold crown, turned right hand, and appeared a pale golden dragon-shaped jade, carrying an overwhelming repression force, pressed towards the King of Nine Calamity. Get away! King Zhou frowned, a flash of irritation flashed on his face, and patted two palms, blasting the wheel of the South King of the town and the dragon-pattern jade of the three princes. Mark of destruction, Da Huang Quan Yin. Banging. Suddenly, the King of the Nine Emperors brought out the peerless undergraduate. A violent breath burst out around him. I saw two heavy and horrible palms, and as the King of the Nine Kings shot it, they smashed the two giant wheels of the Zhennan King and the dragon-pattern jade of the three princes. King Zhennan and the three princes have a distinguished status. The wheel and the jade seal with dragon pattern are naturally not ordinary things. One is refined by the sun and the earth's heart, and the other is the supreme emperor of the kingdom of God. The emperor's jade seal imitations have reached the level of the highest quality rules. However, these two top quality rules are extremely precious. Under the horrible palms of King Zhou, they were shot directly. The King of Nine Kings, except for his footsteps, swelled slightly, and stretched out his 5 fingers again, and grabbed the head of Yin Peng. At this moment, even though Yin Peng was the master of the well-thought-out, his face changed slightly. The Jin Ji didn't even stop King Zhou for a short time, and he turned it into a powder directly under the violent power of King Zhou, and when the 5 fingers of King Zhou were about to be shot on the head of Yin Peng, Zhou Dao, a ghostly figure like the ghost, appeared instantly behind him. Dead. The eerie cold voice sounded, and then, I saw the 9 blood envoys, holding the black evil sickle, and at the same time chopped down on the back of Queen Nine Calamity. Chapter 4186. The first is more. Damn. There was a flash of anger in the eyes of King Zhou. The 9 sickles carried a very horrifying poison. If he did not avoid it, he was afraid that even if he killed Yin Peng, he would die first. Under these 9 sickles. In the eyes of Zhu Jiwang's eyes, the eyes flashed quickly, and there was a hesitation on his face. Finally, he decided to avoid the sharp edge and look for another opportunity. The King of Nine Robbers swept away, avoiding to the side. Puff. However, it's too late. A sickle was severely slashed on his back. Although he could not tear his arcane warframe, the poisonous poison contained in the sickle had already penetrated into the god's body of King Zhou. King Zhou was almost beaten by this. A split, directly from the top of 9 clouds. Taking a deep breath, Zhu Jiawang stabilized his figure, and looked back at the 9 expressionless angels, his expression gloomy to the extreme. The 9 blood envoys would be weaker than anyone else present if they were singled out, but these 9 people joined forces to form an impeccable formation. Coupled with the terrifying and venomous the 9-handle evil sickle can be described as giving Zhu Jie the king a headache. It was the appearance of these 9 blood envoys that instantly changed the situation on the scene, making Zhu Jiawang Kong have the ability to fight against the sky, but was suppressed by death. The King of Nine Robbers was poisoned by our sickle, and took this opportunity to kill him. A blood murmur made indifference, his voice did not contain any feelings, like the cold wind of Joyo. At the next moment, the 9 blood envoys turned into 9 ghosts and came towards the 9 kings. King Zhennan, the 3 princes, and Yin Peng dominated the 3 of them. They nodded inconsistently, and the same body of power broke out to kill King Zhou. The King of Nine Robbers, you will surely die today. Yin Peng, the leader of Li Peng, grinned and turned out 36 handles of Jin Ji at the same time, turning toward the King of Nine Robbers. In these 36 golden geese, the power of each handle is better than in the past. At the sharp blade, there is a purple-black venom dripping. Even when King Zhou saw the 12 people who had been attacked at the same time, he couldn't help his face sinking to the extreme, and his heart continued to sink. But at this moment, a sword rainbow that runs through the world, across the sun and the moon, suddenly rushes from the west. On this sword rainbow, a domineering and sharp sword rises up against the sky, dragging a long tail flame, as if splitting the sky and the sky into 2 halves. It is gorgeous and extremely brilliant. This sword rainbow directly breaks through the clouds on the top of 9 clouds, and it's coming. Suddenly, no matter it was the King of Nine Calamities or the people who came from the rush, all stopped their hands and narrowed their eyes to look at this sword rainbow. Well, who is this person? This kendo breath has never been seen in the ruins. What does this person want to do? Is it the enemy of King Nine Calamity and wants to take a chance when you see this? Yin Peng dominated each other and looked at each other. The next moment, the Zhenhong stopped, the dazzling radiance gradually dissipated, and one of the young men with black hair appeared. The young man was cold, wearing a wide hood and hunting in black. He was holding a red sword in his hand and a simple sword box on his back. It's him. A fourth level dominate? Yin Peng, Zhennan King, and others looked at each other, and frowned. Who is this person? The three princes had never seen Zhen Wushuang, and asked aside. Yin Peng replied, You do know the three princes. When we and the King of Nine Calamities fought in Fengyang Gorge 1,000 years ago, it was this person who stopped Qing Shuzi, and finally Qing Shuzi chased him off. Unexpectedly, he came back safely, but King Zuzi's whereabouts are still unknown. I just saw him on the plane, but I didn't care. He didn't expect this person to come here. In the eyes of Yin Peng's dominator, there was a touch of dissatisfaction. In his opinion, Zhen Wushuang should never appear here. What are God Jiawei doing? Even a fourth-level master can't stop it. The master Yin Peng shook his head, but he still didn't care. In his opinion, although the sword warrior's combat power is good, in front of him in the situation, it is difficult for him to change anything. King Zhoujia and Zhen Wushuang stood side by side, one with white hair and one with black hair. Zhen Wushuang, why are you here? Zhu Jiawang looked at Zhen Wushuang sideways and asked without expression. Zhen Wushuang poked his lips and sneered, I won't come, shall I watch you die? Wang Zhouyan felt warm in his heart, and was quite emotional. He did not expect to save him in the end, but he was in the Temple of Life and his rival soared unparalleled. However, King Zhoujia gave a heavy snorting voice, and said rudely, who is King Zhoujian? Do you still need your help? Zhen Wushuang heard a smile and heard that King Zhoujia has always been arrogant. In other words, it is death to face his life and suffer. He naturally will not care about Zhoujian. King Nine Calamities, not much to say, a total of 12, you kill 6, I kill 6, how? Zhen Wushuang smiled slightly. Nine Calamity Wang Wenyang laughed loudly, only feeling the arrogance in his heart, he laughed heartily, sword unparalleled, can you do it? Okay. Zhen Wushuang raised his eyebrows and sneered, well, wait and see. When the words landed, Zhen Manzuang flashed in his eyes, and he immediately rushed towards the three princes, King of Nine Robbers, this person, leave it to me. It is good. King Zhoujia nodded, and his steps were swept away toward the envoy. The 9 envoys had already made him annoyed. Now he just wants to kill and then fast. The three princes looked at the sword Wushuang who rushed at him, and made a soft noise in his mouth. This little guy wants to kill me. The third prince chuckled a little. Although he didn't know why Zhen Wushuang's first target was why he didn't care at all. He was dominated by the 4th grade, no matter how strong he could be. Act recklessly. The three princes shook their heads, disregarding the dragon-printed jade seal, and patted the palm of the sword directly. Boom. This palm did not use his 30% strength, but it was enough to kill the ordinary ultimate master, not to mention the 4th-level master such as Zhen Wushuang. In his opinion, this palm is enough to completely kill Zhen Wushuang. Idiot. Zhen Wushuang gave a sneer, and the Wu weapon sword in his hand gently flung away, and a cold sword light was about to open the palm. Then, Zhen Wushuang leapt along, and appeared instantly on the top of the three princes. Says, dead, call out. A blood moon sword orn, suddenly cut off along the Wu weeping sword. This sword is enough to destroy the 100,000 mountains. What? The three princes were shocked, and had no time to evade, and had to hurry up the dragon-printed jade seal to resist. Chapter 4187. Second more. A crisp sound of golden iron and iron rang, and a long series of golden sparks splattered. Then, I saw this dragon-print jade, with three princes, and shot the whole person backwards. He fell directly to the ground and fell savagely. On the ground, a large pit exploded. Jianwu's eyes flashed coldly, without hesitation, his body blasted out like a shell, and continued to kill the three princes on the ground. How can that be? The three princes stood up from the ground, glanced down at the dragon-textured jade seal, and saw a faint black mouth on the dragon-textured jade seal where it was chopped off by Wu Wei's Excalibur. How could the attack power of that sword be so strong? How high is the rank? The three princes were horrified. You must know that this dragon-textured jade seal is a treasure of top-notch rule, and it turned out to be cut by the weeping sword of Wu Wu. This means that the Wu crying Excalibur is higher than the dragon jade seal. Without waiting for him to think, Jian Wushuang has once again killed with a sword. The three princes had a dignified expression, and there was no trace of contempt in their hearts, and his voice was low and he shouted, "Big devotion to God, mountains, and rivers." Boom! Suddenly, an overbearing atmosphere reached the extreme, centering on the three princes, bursting out. Under the three princes, there appeared a huge throne. The three princes sat on the throne, like the emperor in charge of thousands of miles, and the endless domineering surged out. The dragon-shaped jade seal rose and rose in the wind. In just a few breaths, it turned into a majestic mountain, repressing towards the sword unparalleled. Jian Wushuang looked up at this majestic mountain, his eyes flashed the hunting war. These three princes are those who have been the strongest enemy ever in history. Even if he has become more powerful today, he doesn't dare to be half-minded. Sword up, Jian Wushuang whispered, and then, the black hair in his hood flew up, and the turbulent wind, floating clouds, floating dust and gravel all turned into the purest energy in the world. Like the return of Baichuan, it came from all directions, and finally gathered in his hands, turning into a silver sword rainbow up to 500 feet long. This sword was realized by Yu Jian Wushuang during the dueling battle with the King of Nine Calamities in the trial ground. Yu Jian Wushuang formed a prototype in Wudao Hanoi and forced the Qing Shuzi to retreat in the ruins of Tai Luo. This sword is nameless, but it is Jian Wushuang's first killing sword. This sword has not yet been perfected, but as Jian Wushuang swallowed the 9-leaf sword grass in the second floor of the Tara ruins, Kendo's repairs skyrocketed in 1,000 days, and after breaking through the third source of Kendo's origin, it finally matured. This sword has a name today. Its name is Chop Star. Whether it is the Wu weapon sword with a large arc in the middle class of the sword without hands, or his deepening understanding of the origin of Kendo, it has made Jian Wushuang's sword slashing. The power of the sword has changed dramatically compared to before. The sword has no pedals, is holding a 500 feet of silver sword rainbow, looks up at the dragon-shaped jade seal that turns into a mountain, takes a deep breath, looks like a note, and spit out 2 words, "Choose the star." Suddenly, Jian Wushuang raised his arm, and the rich and mysterious laws of the universe, infused with the endless majestic power, instilled in the Wu weeping sword, and severely cut down towards the mountain. At this moment, an unparalleled icy cold swordsmanship rushed up into the sky and directly shattered the thick clouds of 10 feet. Immediately after, Wu weeping sword trembled hundreds of millions of times instantly, and sounds like the crying of the gods and the whispering of the Buddha and the demon uttered from Wu weeping. The silver sword rainbow finally broke on the mountain, turned into a dragon-shaped jade seal. Ding 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 ding. Suddenly, the silver sword rainbow and the dragon-pattern jade seal collided thousands of times in succession, making an unpleasant sound of gold-iron collision. The mountains turned into dragon jade seals, and the silver sword rainbow refused to give up each other. They kept apart and bumped together. The 3 princes looked up to this scene as if they were close to the enemy. Jian Wushuang also narrowed his eyes and did not dare to relax in the slightest expression. Click, 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 click. Gradually, the silver sword rainbow of 500 feet long, the sword light was constantly worn away and dim, and the mountains that turned into dragon-line jade seals were covered with cracks like spider webs. With the explosion, the power of the sword of Zhong Xing was completely obliterated, and that mountain made a mourning and shot back into the hands of the 3 princes. His legs made 2 huge gullies on the ground. He looked down at the dragon-shaped jade seal in his hands, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. I saw that there were hundreds of fine cracks on that dragon-patterned jade seal. The sword was unparalleled, and I couldn't help but sigh slightly. The power of this sword, even if it was blocked by dozens of ultimate masters, can be killed by metal. Beheaded the three princes. These three princes are indeed the invincible existence of the ultimate master, and they have a background of worshipping the kingdom of God, and their strength is really real. I'm not an opponent. At this moment, the three princes had a thought that seemed to him absurd. Blessed with the three princes of the kingdom of God, the invincible existence of the ultimate dominator is not the opponent of the fourth level right now? The three princes couldn't believe it, but when he looked at the beginning to the end, there was no sword Wushuang stepping back, and he had to recognize this reality. Who are you? Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang glanced back at him. In the eyes of the three princes, the eyes flickered and he said, sword unparalleled. Well, how about a deal between us? Oh. Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow and smiled. What deal? After hearing the words, the three princes took a deep breath and seemed to make a decision, and replied, the sword is unparalleled, the king of 9 calamities, my highness can withdraw, and we stop there. How? The three princes had already resigned. In his opinion, it was easy for them to kill the king of the 9 calamities before, so he didn't mind stepping on it and taking a cup of tea, but in front of him, the sword had unparalleled strength. It is very likely that he can be left here, so how could he be willing to confess his honorable life here for a triumphant king? Jian Wushuang heard the words and suddenly laughed. The proposal of the three princes is indeed good. He and Zhu Jiewang, and even Jian Wushuang have no resentment. If he can withdraw now, it is indeed a good thing for Zhu Jie and Jian Wushuang. But unfortunately two more arrived today. Chapter 4188. The first is more. No. Jian Wushuang shook his head. The three princes frowned and asked, why? Jian Wushuang replied with a faint smile, three princes, it seems you still don't understand why I was the first one to find you. Huh? The three princes squinted his eyes. He didn't expect this to go quickly. I don't know why Jian Wushuang first came to him. Speaking of them, they met for the first time. Even if Jian Wushuang was looking for an opponent, he shouldn't be found. Jian Wushuang also revealed the answer for him. Do you remember, the water which dominates? Jian Wushuang said lightly. The water which dominates? The three princes frowned upon hearing the words. There were too many masters he had ever seen. Except for those invincible masters who were famous in the universe, he didn't really have any impression. It wasn't until a long time later that he seemed to remember, as if he had just come to the ruins of Tai Luo soon, there was a 5th-level master who accidentally blocked his way and was shot dead with his palm. Before this person was dying, he seemed to say that his master was the master of the water witch. Afterwards, it seems that he also heard that the master of the water witch came to him and wanted a fairness. He is the three princes who worship the kingdom of God. How can he meet such a character? The result of the process was naturally that he had Jiao Yang under his hands to dominate others, and blasted out 3 masters and apprentices who were masters of water witches. You dominate that water witch? The three princes narrowed his eyes. Good. Jian Wushuang nodded calmly. Ha 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 ha, joke, it's just a joke, Jian Wushuang, you are going to kill me for a cricket ant? The three princes suddenly burst out laughing, and the waist of laughter was bent. He almost felt that this was the biggest joke in his life. What identity does the water witch dominate? A waste who do not know which remote corner of the universe dominates. And who is he? His Royal Highness the 3 kingdoms of the universe honorable status, admired by thousands. Just because he shot and killed an apprentice dominated by the water witch, Jian Wushuang even came to kill him? Jian Wushuang looked calmly at the 3 princes who smiled like crazy, and slowly said, you see them like ants, do you think they are? What are you talking about? Do you dare to see me as an ant? The 3 princes bowed his head sharply, looking at Jian Wushuang. His face was extremely cold. Jian Wushuang did not answer him, but slowly let go of the Wu weapon sword in his hand, and said, when the light disappears, in the deepest darkness, that deprives all power. Its name. Forever night. Alas. There was no earth-shattering explosion, nor was there an explosion that made the world eclipsed. When the sentence of Jian Wushuang was finished, it was like dropping a small stone in the calm water, making ripples ripple. Wu Cry Excalibur, starting from the tip of the sword, disappeared inch by inch. Sword unparalleled, slowly closed his eyes. Wu Weeping Sword, suspended in front of Jian Wushuang, starting from the tip of the sword, turned inch by inch into nothingness. It wasn't broken, but like energy transformed into heaven and earth, until the entire sword disappeared completely and silently. The three princes did not know why, but apparently nothing happened, but they suddenly felt a terrible threat. This threat is far stronger than any time he has come. His forehead began to swell with fine cold sweat, and a sense of anxiety appeared in his heart. He could not help but yell in the direction of the king of Jiuzhai and the king of Zhennan, and shouted, "Yin Peng, come and help me." On the battlefield of King Nine Calamities, Yin Peng dominated his brow, and the three princes were also the invincible ultimate masters who were quite famous in the universe. How could a fourth-rank master do not solve it? Even to the point of needing help. Waste. Yin Peng dominated the curse, but still turned his head toward Zhennan King and said, "Master Wang, the three princes seem to be in trouble, and I ask you to help." Zhennan Wang nodded his head, stared at Jian Wushuang in the distance, and pulled a cruel smile at the corner of his mouth. Fortunately, he didn't want to face the King of Nine Calamities, so he might as well start with the fourth-ranked kid. "His Royal Highness, my king is here to help you." The Zhennan yelled at the three princes, then stepped on them, and instantly turned into a godlike man, and appeared next to the three princes. "Your Highness, are you all right?" King Zhennan glanced at him. "It's okay." The third prince replied. His expression did not change slightly with the arrival of Zhennan King. "Master, this kid is weird." The third prince took a deep breath, and he could feel that the threat and anxiety like the back of the mang did not decrease with the arrival of King Zhennan. "Eccentric." After hearing this, King Zhennan said with a smile, "His Royal Highness, this fourth-order master of this district can go weird. Are you worried?" After that, the Zhennan dynasty stepped into the void in the distance, and looked at the sword Wushuang with closed eyes, suddenly as if he felt something, and said quietly, "Well? I haven't noticed before, the kid's kendo the breath is actually the same as the one who saw and killed Xingdou and Tiansu at the beginning. Is it impossible?" Xingdou and Tiansu said that the person with the big secret is this guy. "Also, my king has to look, this is a big secret and weird man. What's so unusual about it?" After speaking, the king of Zhennan sneered, stretched out his huge hand, and grabbed sword Wushuang. "Pretend to be gods and ghosts, come here to the king." Boom. Not yet waiting for Zhennan King to grasp Jian Wushuang, but suddenly opened his eyes. In his eyes, there were no eye pupils, no white eyes, and nothing but darkness. A trace of thick black mist spread from under Jianhua's feet, rendering the entire void into a black, and then slowly rushed towards the Zhennan King and the three princes. The next moment, Jian Wushuang said softly, "Deprive it, night." Alas! As the stones fell into the water, ripples rippled, the world in front of the King of the South and the three princes suddenly changed. Between the entire world, as if only the two of them were left, in their eyes, time began to accelerate, everything around them was gradually fading, and the world seemed to have a thick haze. And this is just the beginning. The colors of the world kept deepening, and gradually, from gray to dark again, and then to black, and black continued to deepen until it was as dark as ink, and there was no light in their eyes. King Zhennan and the three princes are like falling into a dark and eternal kingdom. In this kingdom, there is no light, no vitality, no hope. Only the scent of depression, dullness, silence, coldness, and stiffness began to entangle them. King Zhennan and the three princes, under this complex atmosphere, suddenly felt a strong uneasiness in their hearts. Mando sword, Mando sword. Chapter 4189. Second more. Pretend to be a ghost. King Jinan snorted, not so good-looking, and whispered, "Big sun god wheel, break this king, call out." The two wheels behind him suddenly burst into the sky like two raging fires, smashing into a dark place. However, on this weekday, The magnificent sun wheel of the gods is like an ignition star, and it is thrown into the ocean, and even the waves have not risen, and they gradually disappear. There is an invisible power that deprives the power of the great sun god wheel, and then in Junnan King's furious eyes, these two ranks are the god wheel of the supreme rule of supreme, and the rank gradually starts to decline. Top grade, medium grade, low grade. In just a few short breaths, these two chakras turned from the top-class rule to treasure, and became dim and dull mortal artifacts. Finally, they continued to decompose, shatter, and turn into nothingness. This. King Junnan and the three princes looked at each other, and there was a disbelief in their eyes. This weird power can make the rule of treasure fall into a mortal weapon silently, and the two of them are unheard of. They hadn't waited for them to think about it, and what happened immediately made them suddenly startled. They were full of violent divine power, disappearing at a very fast speed. As if there is a pair of big hands invisible, they are depriving them of everything. Do not. The faces of King Junnan and the three princes changed greatly, and they no longer dared to hide their whole cards. Forbidden surgery, blood day, big secret law, imperial seal. I saw a huge scarlet fireball, like the sun, exuding a terrible and hot atmosphere, rising from a void. In the void, there appeared a huge throne that struck the ancient starry sky. On this huge throne, there was a figure wearing a 9-claw golden dragon suit and a crown with a dragon pattern. He could not see his appearance and was extremely vague. This is the strongest whole card of Junnan King and three princes. However, everything is useless. In this absolute darkness, all light will disappear. That round of day only persisted for less than 10 breaths, the flame extinguished, turned into the purest divine energy, and was swallowed by darkness. The tall and majestic figure of the emperor was even more vulnerable. After being attached to the darkness, he silently collapsed and disappeared. The two kings of Junnan and the three princes were gradually depleted, and their tall and burly bodies quickly dried up, as if they had been drained of flesh and blood. If you look at it from the outside at this time, you will find that there is a huge black ball in the sky, a dark black mist of swords, densely intertwined, like a large net. Jian Wushuang and Junnan King and the three princes were wrapped in them. Time passed slowly. On the side of King Julong's battlefield, as the three princes and Junnan King were pulled away by the sword unparalleled, the pressure of Jiulong King disappeared, and not only was there no sign of being suppressed, it seemed to be a potential after the ascension of the dragon from heaven. After turning on the talented supernatural power Devil's evolution, the combat power soared tenfold, and the palms were shot like a storm. With their own strength, they pressed 9 envoys and Yin Peng. Dominate the bombardment. The two guys of Junnan King and the three princes, as well as the god Jiawei, are they really doing any ghost? Yin Peng dominated his complexion to the extreme. Originally, he expected that they would be responsible for dragging King Jotsai. After the armor guards packed up the power of His Majesty the King of 9 Calamities, they turned around and killed the King of the 9 Kings of Calamity together. But now, not only the batch of nearly 100 ultimate masters of the god Jiawei, but there is no news at all. The three princes who are unparalleled to the enemy sword, and the Junnan King who supports the three princes, all have nothing to do. In the eyes of Yin Peng's dominated eyes, the eyes flashed quickly, and while working with Ju Zun Ming to resist the offensive of King Ju Jie, he looked toward Junnan King, the three princes, and Sword Wushuang. I saw that in the void, Junnan King, the three princes, and Jian Wushuang all disappeared, leaving a large round black ball. There was no breath coming from the three in this black ball. The situation has changed, maybe I have to leave again this time. Yin Peng dominated his thoughts and turned sharply. He has always been a cautious person, otherwise he would not have been in the family. The man who escaped from birth. The situation in front of him had completely deviated from his expected trajectory, so there was a slight resignation in his mind. The King of 9 Kings also paid attention to the movement on the side of Jian Wushuang. He glanced down at the huge black ball like a spider's web where Jian Wushuang was, and he couldn't help raising his brows. Is this a thought of the kingdom of God? The Jujiawang murmured to himself quite doubtfully. Others may not see anything, but as a person who has stepped into the supreme threshold, he can naturally see that the black ball of Jian Wushuang clearly opened up a world that belongs to Jian Wushuang himself. No, although this is very similar to Emin God Kingdom, but it is not Emin God Kingdom. King Zhoujia shook his head. As the comprehension of Emin God Kingdom, he naturally understands Emin God Kingdom. For a moment, the Kingdom of God opened up a separate world with heaven and earth, mountains, rivers, and rivers. But the black ball space of Jian Wushuang is full of coldness, silence, and vitality. This breath made him feel a little scared. In just 1,000 years, I didn't think this guy had grown to this point. King Zhoujia shook his head, a smile appeared on his face. How can I make him compare? Next moment. I miss the kingdom of God. Get up. Rumble. Suddenly, the world was eclipsed, and an unprecedentedly powerful breath, with the center of Zhu Jiawang as the center of the explosion. This breath is completely different from the breath of the previous king of the Nine Kings, and it is full of a feeling of Xuanao Avenue. In this breath, the void in the ruins of Tai Luo seems to be unbearable, and it emits a carca-like glass-breaking sound. Immediately, the space around the trial site began to change. Centered on King Zhoujia, a huge and magnificent force directly extended. This power is enough to suffocate and tremble anyone who lives there. This is the thought of the kingdom of God that only the Supreme can realize. No. Run away. Yin Peng's face suddenly changed. At this moment, even the 9 bloodless envoys, who were always expressionless, shrank their pupils, and the voice sank. King 9 Calamities, let me wait to leave, our blood temple will never look for you again, all future it doesn't matter. They have already seen it. Today it is determined that it will not be possible to take down the King of 9 Robbers, unless at this moment King Zhennan and the 3 princes can kill the sword without double-clicking to help. Chapter 4190. The first is more. Leave. You don't study the blood temple? Ha 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 ha, who are you when I am the king of 9 calamities? Are you the waste you can handle? It's a joke. Saying that, Zhu Jiwang's expression evoked a sigh of sorrow. Blood god, this seat tells you that you don't want to leave today. In other days, this seat will even set foot on the blood temple. Bold. Presumptuous. Suddenly, the 9 blood angers were so angry that they scolded one after another. Come in all. King Zhoujia sneered, moving his hands to the middle, and at that moment, the thought of the kingdom of God violently fired more than 10 black chains, dominating the volume of the 9 blood envoys and Yin Peng, and immediately dragged into the realm of the kingdom of thought. As time slowly passed, the most fierce and spectacular battle in the ruins of Tai Luo, at this time, became extremely quiet. After about half a column incense time. Click, click, click. The kingdom of the 9 kings of God separated and shattered piece by piece, and immediately followed, they saw 6 figures radiating from the realm of the kingdom of God. These 6 people are impressively dominated by the king of 9 calamities and Yin Peng, as well as 4 envoys. Just within half a column of incense, under the repression of the kingdom of God, Zhu Jiawang slayed and killed 5 blood gods in succession. The remaining Yin Peng dominates and the 5 blood puppets, and also wolves to the extreme. Yin Peng dominates the 36 handles of Jin Ji, leaving only 12. The 5 blood puppets, the black robe, are broken and exposed 5 ugly and scary faces covered with blood. Escape. Yin Peng's face was so ugly that he almost died in the hands of King 9 Calves just now. If it wasn't for his immediate decision, he would have blasted 24 handles of Gege. I'm afraid he would be unlucky with those 5. The same blood died in the hands of King 9 Calamities. This made him completely without courage to fight again. I saw him wave a red poisonous mist, and his body swept away towards a place. Want to escape again this time? The King of 9 Robbers already hated Yin Peng as the dominator, but he was an assassin who could not help but frustrate him. How could he let him escape? As soon as King Zhoujia stepped on, and was about to chase towards the Lord of Yin Peng, he saw the 4 blood envoys, killing him with venomous eyes, blocking his way. Act recklessly. The King of Zhoujia immediately became furious. The blood made him almost like a plaster on dog skin. Yin Peng dominated while rushing forward, while looking back, he noticed this scene, and his heart was overjoyed. I'm sure I won't die, Yin Peng. He smiled smugly. However, he did not notice that the direction he was rushing to was exactly where the sword was unparalleled. There, Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes. With the opening of Jian Wushuang's eyes, the darkness in his eyes gradually faded away, and the light was restored again. The ball was broken up piece by piece, and then turned into a black mist sword gas at first, rushing from all directions towards Jian Wushuang. The 2 kings of Zhennan and the 3 princes have turned into 2 dead bodies. Their eyes were wide, their mouths opened, their faces full of horror, as if they had experienced something terrible before they died. With the sword of Yongyi, Jian Wushuang directly killed the ultimate masters of 2 invincible levels. Once this is spread, it will be enough to make the whole universe horrify it. The black mist like a snake condensed before the sword was double-sided, and finally turned into a blood-red Wu-weeping sword. Jian Wushuang's face was a little pale, and he grasped the pancake of Wu crying Excalibur, panting slightly. Suddenly, his pale face seemed to have been supplied with something, and a faint red appeared. I use this sword too reluctantly, but the power is really extraordinary. The sword of Wushuang could not help but smile a little. Yongyi, he only realized a little fur, then kill King Zhennan and the 3 princes. If he really realizes that Yongyi is complete, then what? Jian Wushuang thought. While turning slowly, he looked towards King Zhoujia. I saw a figure, with his head buried, and rushed towards him. Yin Peng. Jian Wushuang saw this, with a playful smile on his face. Well, this guy of Zhujiawang is really terrifying. It seems that he wants revenge. I have to wait until I break the Supreme. Yin Peng dominated his head, rushing forward while thinking about the next step. There is definitely no way to stay at the Tara ruins. The first thing to do now is to leave the Tara ruins, and then find a remote corner in the universe and stay for 100,000 years and 80,000 years. After that, I went out again to look for opportunities to get revenge. This time, I have already won the ticket. If it were not for the 2 idiots of the 3 princes and the king of Zhennan, even a 4th-level master can't clean it up. Why would I fall to the road now? Where is it? Thinking of this, Yin Peng's eyes flashed a look of resentment. Originally, this time, he already felt that he had a winning ticket. According to his plan, even if King 9 Calamity is not dead, it is estimated that there is only 1 breath left. As a result, the guy who dominated the 4th grade did not know where to take it. What came out turned out to be the one who reversed the whole fighting situation. Just as he lowered his head and thought, the next time he came out to seek revenge, when he wanted to put Jian Wushuang on the list of kills, suddenly, he seemed to hit him, and he stopped suddenly. He looked up in doubt. Yin Peng is overlord, hello. Before he looked up completely, a cold voice suddenly sounded in his ear. The sword looked at Yin Peng, who was sent to him in front of him, without expression on both sides, without expression. It's you. Yin Peng was dominated by surprise, then first glanced back at the Zhujiawang who was being tangled by 4 blood gods, then turned to look at Jian Wushuang, and sneered, okay, before I left, I still could let me meet you again. Let's die, boom. The master of Yin Peng took out a Jin Ji and shot fiercely at Jian Wushuang's head. Idiot. Jian Wushuang shook his head, and even Wu was Excalibur was too lazy to use it, reaching out and grabbing at Yin Peng. The strength of Yin Peng's dominance is even worse than that of Zhennan King and others. Coupled with the battle with the King of 9 Calamities, his power is almost exhausted. How can he be a sword rival? In a short period of time, Yin Peng was dominated by the sword holding his neck with no expression on both sides, holding it in his hand like a chick, and letting his hands and feet kick in the air, hissing and roaring. Chapter 4191. Second more. You let go of me. Boy, I told you to let go of me, Yin Peng shouted with blushing. Shame. He was the ultimate dominator, and was actually carried forward by Jian Wushuang like a chick, which was a shame to him. Responding to him was a slap by Jian Wushuang. Be quiet. Boy, let go of me, and I will give you all the treasures I collected in Tailuo ruins. How about it? Yin Peng dominated with a laugh and tried to soften. Still slap. I said, Please be quiet. If you dare to make a noise again, believe it or not, I will now send you to see your men and the king of the town of Nan. Jian Wushuang glanced at him and said coldly, "Why what?" Yin Peng dominated Wen Yang for a moment and did not respond. Immediately, he reacted suddenly. His body was like an ice cellar, and a chill ran straight from the spine to the top of his head. Could the Jiawei and others supported by the long-term future have died in the hands of this person? Could the king of the south and the three princes? He turned around suddenly and saw that Jian Wushuang was not far from where he stood before, and two dry corpses were standing across. Those two dead corpses are the three princes and the king of Zhennan. Suddenly, Yin Peng's master's complexion instantly lost his blood and became pale. An indescribable shock came from his eyes. Nearly 100 ultimate masters, as well as the ultimate masters of invincible levels such as the king of Zhennan and the three princes, have all died in the hands of this person. Dominated by Yin Peng, he was completely trembling. He only found out that he was wrong from the beginning. It was ridiculous. Because of the preconceived notion, he never put Jian Wushuang in his eyes. In the beginning, why did Jian Wushuang break away from the battlefield? When the sword came west, he came here only when Jian Wushuang had good luck and escaped the pursuit of God Jiawei and others. Even behind him, King Zhennan and the three princes were unparalleled against the enemy sword. For a long time, he had nothing to do with the sword, and he was only trapped by Zhenwu and the three princes. He never thought that nearly 100 ultimate masters such as the god Jiawei, and even the two kings of the Zhennan and the three princes, would die in the hands of Jian Wushuang. This is too horrifying, too ridiculous. If it spreads, the whole universe will shake it. Therefore, it is not that he did not think about it, but that he did not dare to think about it at all. Since ancient times, he has never heard of which fourth-level master can kill two invincible ultimate masters. Even if it is the top extremes of the famous universe, including the owner of this Taro ruins, Taro Supreme, when the fourth level dominated the realm of the year, never had such a brilliant record. All this upset his perception. Evil. This is evil. Yin Peng dominated and looked up at Jian Wushuang in horror. At this moment, his jealousy against Jian Wushuang even surpassed Zhu Jiawang. He believes that even the Nine Calamity King, who is now known as the Invincible Master, could not be compared with Jian Wushuang when he was the fourth-level master. In the distance, the battle between the 9 Kings of Calamity and the 4 envoys has come to an end. If the 9 blood envoys are still there, they can still deal with the 9 Kings of Calamity for the time being. Now there are only 4 of them left, and where will they be the enemy of the 9 Kings of Calamity? In a short quarter of an hour, the 4 blood sacrifice fell one by one and could not escape. A group of disgusting guys. With the last palm of Zhu Jiawang, after taking a messian to take a sickle with a sickle, he snorted and turned his head towards Yin Peng. Looked at the direction of the escape. Jian Wushuang? When Zhu Jiawang saw Yin Peng dominated by Jian hands, his expression was wrong. How do you thank me? Jian Wushuang raised Yin Peng to dominate and shook at Zhou Jianwang, smiling slightly. Zhu Jiawang snorted softly, without a reply, but a smile appeared on his expressionless face. Jian Wushuang held Yin Peng to dominate, and walked step by step towards the King of 9 Calamities. Well, I gave him to you. Jian Wushuang reached out and gave the Lord Yin Peng to the King Zhoulong. For a short time, the King Zhoulong bowed his head to the Lord Yin Peng. A cold arc evoked in the corner of his mouth, teasing, Yin Peng, why don't you escape anymore? Yin Peng's master had no blood on his face. He knew that he could not escape today. For mercy, he can ask for mercy from anyone, but he can't beg mercy from King Zhoulong. This is his final dignity, so he took a deep breath and said lightly, King Zhoulong, this time died in your hands. Here, I can only say that luck is bad, there is no good helper like you, do it. King Zhoujia has never been a dragger, shook his head with a sneer and shook his head, and then shot it on the head of Yin Peng. Boom boom. Suddenly, a large amount of divine power erupted, killing Yin Peng directly and turning it into powder. This battle, with the death of Yin Peng, finally came to an end. After a moment, the sky was restored to its calm and quiet again. The King of 9 Kings and Jian Wushuang fought side by side. The slightly blowing wind blew their black hair and white hair. Jian Wushuang, I owe you a favor this time. King Zhoujia carried his hands on his back, his feet empty, and he said in a deep voice. Jian Wushuang smiled and did not answer. When the King of Nine Kings saw this, he no longer said anything. Only he knew it. How much this human feeling, he said. This means that no matter what life and death enemies Jian Wushuang faces in the future, Shang Jubi, the King of the Nine Dragons, will fall to Huang Quan, and he will do his best to stand behind Jian Wushuang, even if he is against the entire universe, he will spare no expense. Grunt tilde. Not long after, I saw Yi Qingfeng waiting to take the lead, with more than 10 ultimate dominators, hurried to come. Until this time they finally dominated Yin Peng, Zhennan King, and the three princes, the ultimate masters of these three parties, all strangled clean. King Zhoujia, Jian Wushuang, are you okay? Qingfeng stood still in front of Jian Wushuang and Zhoujia Wang, asking with great concern. We look like something. Jian Wushuang quipped with a smile. Qingfeng Shunhu heard that he was completely relieved, then his eyes lighted up, some were not sure, and some looked forward to asking, so, what is Yin Peng dominating? He is dead. Dead. King Zhoujia nodded. When Qingfeng heard the words, his expression suddenly agitated, and he asked, so, what about the South King of the town? All are dead. King Zhoujia continued. Qingfeng Shunhu heard the first shock and then laughed loudly. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.